The rain had been falling for 3 days without pause. Not the kind of rain that storms against the windows or hammers the rooftops. This was softer. Relentless. A steady whisper against the cobblestones, as though the town itself was being shushed into forgetting something. I was the only servant left in the house by then. The others had left for the harvest festival, swearing they would be back before dusk, but that was before the rain began. Since then, no one had returned. Every morning, I lit the kitchen hearth, warmed bread that had gone dry at the edges, and swept the hallways. And every morning, I would pass by the same shape in the courtyard, an old man, standing at the far wall, wearing a dark coat, his head bowed as if studying the stones beneath his feet. At first, I thought he was a tradesman seeking shelter. The master of the house was known to offer his courtyard to travelers. But each time I looked from the window, he had not moved, not an inch, rain sliding off the brim of his hat in thin streams. On the second morning, I left the kitchen door open while I woke, so I could hear if he called out. But the only sound was the rain and the slow ticking of the clock in the study. By noon, I noticed something that set a coldness in my stomach. There were no footprints in the mud where he stood. The water pooled around his boots, but the ground was untouched. That night, I barred the doors. I told myself it was because the town was near empty, because no one would come to help if trouble found me. But I left one candle burning in the kitchen, and I kept waking to its flickering light under my door. On the third morning, I found the candle burned down to a hollow of wax, and the kitchen door unlatched. The rain blew in across the floor, darkening the wood. I thought of the man in the courtyard and went to see if he was still there. He was. Only this time, his head was raised, his face turned toward the window where I stood. His features were pale, unremarkable, so plain that I felt certain I had seen them before, though I could not place where. His lips moved, but the rain swallowed the sound. I went back to my duties, refusing to glance outside again. But as I scrubbed the flagstones of the main hall, I felt it, that sense of being watched, patient and unblinking. The afternoon dimmed early, the clouds pressing low. I lit the lamps before sunset. The master's study smelled of damp paper and smoke. I set about drying the books near the fire. In the wavering light, I thought I heard footsteps in the corridor. Slow. Measured. But when I stepped into the hall, it was empty, only the sound of rain seeping through the roof tiles. That night, I dreamed I stood at the far wall of the courtyard, my boots sinking into wet earth. The rain was warm against my neck. And there, across from me, was the man in the coat, though in the dream, he was much closer. His head was gone, and his hair was the same dark shade as the water running between the stones. He leaned toward me, his mouth opening as if to whisper something, and a drop of rain slid from his lip to mine. I woke with the taste of rainwater on my tongue. In the morning, I found the courtyard empty. My breath caught, relief at first, then unease. There was no sign he had ever stood there. No indentation in the mud, no disturbance to the moss on the wall. And yet the ground was dry where his boots had been, as if the rain had passed over that patch entirely. That was the day I heard his voice. It came from the upper hallway while I was lighting the sconces, soft, like someone speaking to themselves in the next room. I followed it to the farthest door, one that had always been locked in my time at the house. The voice ceased when I placed my hand on the handle. The key was hanging by the kitchen door. I do not know why I took it. The lock turned with a dull scrape. Inside, the room was empty except for a chair facing the window. And in that chair sat the man, head on his knees, water dripping steadily from the brim onto the floorboards. I should have screamed, but he did not move, only looked at me as though we had been meant to meet. I could not tell if his eyes were grey or blue, they seemed to shift like the clouds outside. He lifted one hand, palm up, in a gesture I did not understand. And then, without sound, he was gone. The chair was empty. The floor where the water had dripped was dry. I locked the room and left the key where I had found it. The rain stopped the next morning. The festival bells rang faintly from the town, carried on a breeze that felt almost unfamiliar. The other servants returned in the afternoon, full of laughter and the smell of smoke from bonfires. I told them nothing. But sometimes, when the weather turns and the gutters overflow, I see him again, in the glass of the kitchen window, or the reflection of the courtyard puddles. Always standing, always waiting, the brim of his head spilling water in thin, endless streams. And once, late at night, I woke to the sound of rain that wasn't there. And I knew, without opening my eyes, that he was standing at the foot of my bed.